Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Leveraging Power BI and Hive. Presenting today are May, Principal Program Manager at Microsoft, and Alex Pavlov, Marketing Manager at Simba Technologies. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. Today's presentation will run about an hour. The webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand within 48 hours. A copy of today's presentation and recording link will be sent to you via email once the files are available. If you have any questions during the live webcast, please enter your question in the Q&A widget on the left of your screen and click Submit. We'll try and get through as many questions as we can during the live broadcast. And without further ado, I'd like to turn the presentation over to our first speaker. May, please go ahead.
Hello everyone, this is May. I'm a program manager on the Power BI team. A quick agenda. First we will go through a Power BI product tour, which I will walk you through about 10-15 minutes. And then I will hand off to Alex to go over in detail about connecting to Hive using Simba Odbc drivers. And finally we will take few questions. What is Power BI? Power BI Desktop is a free downloadable Windows application. It is available both in 64-bit operating system as well as 32-bit operating system. You can freely download it from powerbi.com, and its main purpose is to create interactive report for the Power BI service. Power BI service is a cloud analytics service which would serve as a single pane of glass for monitoring all your business information, bring the data together, get insights, and allow you to easily explore. For users who are familiar with the Excel add-ins from Power BI, the desktop tool brings all the three Power BI add-ins together. Power Query, which is for data connectivity, manipulation, transformation, wrangling, and mashup purposes. Power Pivot for modeling and analytical purposes, and Power View for creating interactive reports. So we built this Power BI desktop as a tool for dedicated BI workflow. So this is specializing in creating interactive reports, which you can easily publish it to the Power BI service. We update the Power BI desktop every month, so we are on a very fast, quick, iterative release process. With that, let me share my screen to walk you through a quick end-to-end overview of how to connect to a data source and get quick insight. First, I will take you to the powerbi.com website, where you can download. So go to powerbi.com, and in the home page you would see products. Under that, Power BI Desktop, you can click here and simply download. Once you download and install, you can launch this application and you will get the getting started experience first. This would give you few quick videos, tutorials. It also have links to the forums, our blog, and purposes. We also have a Data Insights Summit coming up here in Bellevue in the month of March, where we are going to share a wealth of information about Power BI. So if you are interested in coming to this summit, you can get more information from the link here. The first step I would do is getting data from a SQL Server database. I click Get Data. Here we have around 45 data connectors today, and every month we add a few more. We have data connectors for all your needs, be it any popular file types, any relational databases, cloud storage systems, or other things like social and communication tools such as Facebook or your Exchange or a web page We also have a lot of connectors for SaaS providers, line of business applications like Salesforce, SAP, CRM, you name it. We also have generic data connectors like Odbc, OData, and JSON interfaces. And with partners like Simba, who are specializing in data connectivity domain, you can virtually connect to any data from Power BI. In this example, I am going to connect to a SQL Server database, which is running on my machine. The first thing you would get is a navigator experience. It would list all the databases that are available there and the tables and views. In this example, I am just going to do a sales order analysis. I am going to select the product subcategory here, table, and there is also a select related tables option at the bottom left. When I click here, it would go look at the relationships that are defined for this table in the SQL Server database and brings in all the related tables as well. So it's an easy way for you to bring all the related tables. So in this case, it brought product and product category. I'm also going to add the sales order, header and detail, and address table. So now I have selected all the tables that I need. I can click edit if I want to go do some transformation mashup purposes. In this case, I am going to simply load this data. It will ask me whether I want to import the data or have a direct query option. Direct query means the data stays in the SQL Server and we only have the definition in the Power BI file. So every interaction that you do is going to go fetch the data for the query that is needed. Whereas in case of import, all the data that is there in the selected tables are brought into this file so that it's a self-contained file that you can share with others. In this case, I'm going to import, and it would connect and import the data from the SQL Server into this Power BI in-memory engine for creating interactive reports. So this would land me in the report canvas. I can simply drag and drop the fields and create the visuals. We also have few other views in this case. If you simply want to look through the data and do some modeling operations, there's a data view. There's also a relationship view. Since we brought in a number of tables, and if there's a relationship in the database, it automatically brought in the relationships from those tables. For the cases where I am bringing data from different systems, I could even drag and drop and create relationships simply by selecting the fields. Now let me go and create a simple visualization first. In this case, I'm going to start with the line total. Simply by clicking the line total field in the field list, I get immediate insight on the amount. It brought in a bar chart. I want to look at by subcategory, so I'm going to go and select the subcategory field. In this case, let me go and drag and drop field here. Let me make sure the relationship is defined correctly. And I can create other information, like let's say I want to look at the product category here as a tree map. I can select the field, and then the details, and then the count of product in that category. So simply And quickly I can create very meaningful data here. If I also want to create some quick calculations, all I need to do is right click here and do a new measure, and I can start adding my calculation. For example, if I want to create a percentage of total, I could simply go do percentage of total, and using the DAX formula, I can say give me the sum of line total, but I want to calculate the overall percentage, so I'm going to use the calculate function here and do the sum of line total again, but in the context of all the selected items in the order detail table. So it is very easy to create quick measures and calculated columns in this scenario. Let me also go create a map visual. Let's say, for example, I want to look at the line total, but by the city. Simply by selecting the city, since it knows this is a geocoded field, it automatically selected a bubble map. And I can go drag and drop the line total into this, and you would see the line total represents the size of the bubble. And you have 25 out of the box visuals readily available. We also have community driven visuals gallery, where you can go and download more community built visuals. There are new visuals added every week. And one interesting visual here is the globe map. You can simply go download this visual, agree to the terms of use. Once it is downloaded, you can go simply import that visual into your report canvas. And I can use the globe map, which would present a three-dimensional view of the data. So instead of overlapping bubbles, now it makes it easier for me to go get more insight. Not only the line total, I can even go use the tax amount in this case as a heat map to see how much, where I'm spending mostly on the tax. I can use my mouse wheel to scroll and then do further, and as I select the product category, it would do the cross highlighting, filtering, and the regular Power View type experience. So I have, once it is done, I can save this as a PBIX file. Let me store it here as a webinar file. I can email this file to others, and if they have Power BI desktop, they can easily open this file. I can also click publish, and in this case, it would log me in to the Power BI service, and it would upload this file to the service, and I can share the file from the service to others as well. If I have not logged into the service before, it would prompt me to sign in first. In this case, I have logged in before, so it has successfully published. I can click the link here, and it would take me directly to the report available in the service. And you would see the tree map readily available here. But for the globe map, since I used a custom visual, it gives me a warning. And currently, I have to go enable it one time. Once it is enabled, then you would see the globe map the three-dimensional globe map appearing even on the browser with the same capabilities as well. So quickly, I walk you through how easily you can connect to a SQL Server database, bring the tables as well as the related tables. You can also manually create relationship in the tool, drag and drop the fields to create interactive visuals. You can also bring in your own visual and easily publish it to the service. So this is the power of Power BI Desktop, and you can go to powerbi.com to download this tool and play with it. With this, let me hand it off to Alex to go over in detail about Hive connectivity.
Thank you, May. My name is Alex Popov. I'm a marketing manager here at Simba Technologies. Just a few words about our company. We specialize, as May mentioned, in data connectivity solutions. So we provide connection to the data sources that may not be included in the 45 data sources supported by Power BI out of the box. We have a number of database connectors. And today in this demo, I'm going to demonstrate to you how easy it is to set up a connection between Power BI, Desktop, and Hive data source. And you don't need to be a Hadoop or Hive expert. As long as you have a few parameters telling you how to connect to the data source, it should look like just a regular relational data source, mostly in Power BI. So the process involves basically two steps. You need to find a driver, Odbc driver, download it. It's a click-through installer, nothing fancy there. And then after that, you can configure data source name or a connection that will tell Power BI how to connect to this data. So you can download the driver from Microsoft website. So here I'm playing just a search on the Microsoft website, and under downloads, if you search for Odbc driver, you'll find a number of drivers. You can see the Hive, Odbc, and Spark. And if you require connection to other data sources that may not be provided on the Microsoft website, you can get Odbc driver from Microsoft partners like Simba Technology. So on our website, simba.com, there's a number of connectors for relational and non-relational data sources that you can use from within the Power BI. So why is it important? It's important primarily because the data is getting more and more heterogeneous. If just a few years ago, most of the data would be stored in relational database like SQL Server or Oracle or DB2, nowadays more and more data is stored in the new non-relational big data data sources. And very often the question of integrating or working with those data sources comes to, can we integrate it into the rest of our infrastructure? Can our analysts use the familiar tools to access the data? And Microsoft is doing a fantastic job in supporting a large number of data sources. And again, if some of the sources not directly supported, there's always an option of working with them through Odbc driver. So I went ahead and downloaded the driver and installed it. It's really just a click-through installer. And after that, the next step is to configure the data source name, which will tell Power BI how to connect to the data source. I am opening Odbc Administrator, and I need to create a DSN. You can either create a user DSN or system DSN. It doesn't matter at this point. So I'm clicking Add, and I'm selecting the driver from the list of available drivers. So as soon as you install the driver on your machine, you'll see the driver in this list. I'm selecting Hive Odbc driver. And this is the screen where I'm providing parameters that describe how to connect to my data source. So the data source name, I can name it whatever I want. So let's call it Hive 64. Providing the name of a host that stores my, on which my Hadoop cluster runs. And I need to select the authentication mechanism. So in this case, I'm just using simple username authentication. And the rest of the parameters you can usually leave unchanged. They have a sensible default options. So the last step before clicking OK is to test the connection, and you should get a confirmation that you were able to establish connection successfully. So at this point, I have a user data source called Hive64, and that's the name that I will use in the Power BI to connect to my Hive instance. I'm launching Power BI Desktop, and to establish connection, I go to Get Data. Click on More, and I will need to scroll down to the Odbc entry. That's the interface to access any of my Odbc data sources, and I click Connect. In the following screen, I just need to type DSN equals and provide the name of the DSN we just created, which is Hive64, and it's non-case sensitive, and click OK to establish connection with the data source. So now you can see in the navigator screen the 4 tables available in this data source. And for the demo, I'm using the open source data source, very popular for machine learning and big data applications. It's called MovieLens, and it contains millions of user ratings of various movies. I will provide the link to the data source and all the scripts required to create Hive schema and load the data into Hive. You can download it and play it on your machine. So I'm going to select all 4 tables and load them into Power BI. I'm just selecting the tables that I'm going to work with and clicking the Load button. And at this point, the connection between Power BI and Hive data source is handled by the Simba Odbc driver that does all the translation from Odbc calls to Hive query language and presents the data in a tabular format that we can work with on the Power BI side. So that finished loading the data into Power BI. So I'm switching to the data view, and we can see our 4 tables listed on the right. So one thing I'd like to do, because it contains the data source name and the schema name and the table, I want to shorten the names so it's easier to see them and easier to work with. So just by double-clicking the table name, you can quickly rename them. I'm going to rename all of them. Ratings. And the last one. So here's our four tables brought in. We can see the user tables contains user ID, gender and age information, occupation, index to the link to the occupation table, and the zip code. Ratings, just a table linking the user ID with a movie ID and rating and a timestamp. Occupations table defines some occupations that describe the users. And the main table is movies table that contains movie ID, title, and the genres. So let's clean up this data a little bit to make it easier to work with. And that's where I think Power BI is doing exceptional work. It's providing a lot of functionality for the data analyst to prepare the data for the analysis. Because it's very often we have to deal with data that has missing values. It may not be in the format that is useful for analysis. So data analysts usually spend a lot of time in this phase preparing the data. And most of the time with the older technology, it involved writing a lot of SQL queries or maybe Python scripts or maybe even doing, loading data into Excel and cleaning it up manually every time. So Power BI really provides a lot of functionality that simplifies this process and makes it repeatable. So to demonstrate some of the features, I am going to split the year the movie was released into its own column. So you can see that the movie title is followed by the year it was released in the parentheses. So we can go to the Edit Query screen and fix this issue. So I'm selecting the column with the movie title, and I'm using the split column function to split it by delimiter. So I'm selecting the delimiter from the drop-down list. So parentheses is not listed, so I can just use the custom. So I'm going to split on the opening parenthesis and the left parenthesis, and I want to only use the rightmost delimiter found in the title, just in case that the parenthesis might be part of the movie title. Clicking OK, and as you can see, Power BI created a new column with a year movie was released. We just need to do a little bit more cleanup. Let's remove the closing parenthesis. So I'm using replace values function. So I'm looking for a right parenthesis, and I'm replacing it with an empty string. And now we have a clean new column with the year movie was released. And we can rename the column by double-clicking on its title. And I'll also clean up the title. Now, if we look at the genres column, we can see that different genres that describe the movie saved in what's called a composite value. So it's an array of applicable genres. While it's a very efficient way of storing this information, it's not really helping to query the data. So what we can do, and what Power BI enables us to do very easily, is to normalize this column. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a new table that will contain the genres, and all of them will be linked back to the movie title. So I can duplicate this table by right-clicking on it and selecting duplicate from the movie, from the menu. I'm going to rename this new copy of the table into genres. We don't need title and the year column in this new table because they exist in the original movies table, so I can just remove those columns. And I'm going to do a similar thing to the genres. I'm going to split them at each comma into its own column. So I'm selecting the column, and I'm using split column by delimiter function again. Splitting by comma, and this time I actually do want to split it at each occurrence of the delimiter. So every time Power BI finds a comma, it will create a new column. Here, so we can see that we now have each category or each genre of a movie in its own column. So let's do a little bit more cleanup and remove the opening and closing brackets that we don't need anymore. I'm cleaning up the opening and the closing brackets. Now, what I want to also draw your attention to is you can see on the right side of the screen, there's a list of applied steps. So all the transformations and data manipulations that we've done so far are recorded. And we can always go back in time if we made a mistake. You can always click on that step and go back to the condition in which the table was at that particular point of time. And there's also a gear icon next to the step that allows you to modify the parameters. So if you need to split or replace a different value, you can always go back and make changes to your transformations. It's a very powerful feature, and makes the data cleanup repeatable. So if we need to reload the data a day or a week later with the new data, we don't need to worry about reapplying those steps, doing the cleanup manually, or running it through the script. It's all stored here in the Power BI file and will be reapplied automatically. Now, this looks much better, but still not very easy to query, because if I need to, let's say, find all the movies in comedy genre, the comedy may appear in the first column or in the third column, so query would be difficult to make. So what we're going to do in this case, we're going to transform this table from what's called wide format, where we have one row per movie with all the genres listed there. We want to unpivot it and make multiple rows for each of the categories or for each of the genres the movie belongs to. So I'm going to select all the genres, and on the Transform tab, there is a drop-down with an unpivot columns function, and that's doing exactly what we're trying to achieve here. So I'm doing unpivot, and you can see that now we have only one column that contains all genres. So if I need to select only movies from the comedy or adventure genre, it's very easy to do. So we can delete the attribute column because it's no longer needed, and we'll rename the value into genre. Okay, and this completes our data preparation. We can return the data back to Power BI and start doing our visualizations. So I'm clicking on Close and Apply, and Power BI will apply the transformations we just defined and bring us back into the data modeler screen. One thing we need to do, again, is to look at the relationships. And May already mentioned this. So Power BI will try to detect the relationships between the tables. And it works very reliably most of the time, but sometimes the data may not be formatted properly, so it may not detect a particular relationship. So in this case, for example, let me just reorder it on the screen so it's easier to see. So we can see that it detected relationship between the movies table and the genres table. It detected the relationships between the users and the movies through the ratings table. But the relationship between the occupations and the users were not detected because it was probably was trying to match on the occupation column, but in the users table, occupation column contains the numeric identificator, and the occupations is actually a string. So we need to link from occupations to the occupation ID. And it's really easy to add this relationship. I just click on the field in the users table and drag to the ID column, and that creates the relationship. And we can double check that the relationship is defined correctly. So we can see that we're currently linking occupation column in the users table to the ID column in the occupations table, and it's a many-to-one relationship. And this is it. That finishes up our preparation for the analysis, and now we can start exploring. And I'm not going to go over the same functionality that May already introduced in his part of the demo. I'm just going to do a very quick demonstration. So, for example, if we just want to see the distribution of our users, how they're distributed by occupation, we can easily do it by selecting occupation. We will, let's say, want to look at it as a histogram, and we'll count the number of users in each occupation. So it's just a very quick demonstration of what we can do once we prepare the data. And that completes my part of the presentation, and I'll pass it back to Yoni.
Thank you, Alex. Let's see. Before we take questions, I'd like to just remind everybody of the Microsoft Data Insights Summit, March 22nd to the 23rd in Bellevue. And here's some more information. And the web address, datainsightsummit.com, to register. Give everyone a chance to ask some questions, enter some questions into the Q&A panel. Okay, go ahead and push the first question to the slide area. Can I use Hive QL with this driver?
Yes, absolutely. I haven't gone over this in my short demo, but you can, in the advanced settings of the data source that we created in the demo, there's an option to enable pass-through of HiveQL commands. So in the demonstration, we basically just used basic functionality to load the table as a whole. But we can also specify in our connection dialog, specify the query. It's under advanced settings, so you can specify the HiveQL query, and the Odbc driver will pass through this query to the data source and will allow you to use more complex or data source dependent queries that would not be supported by Power BI directly.
Thank you, Alex. This next question, does the Hive Odbc driver renormalize composite columns?
That's a good question. Currently, the Hive Odbc driver does not renormalize the composite columns. An example of what this question is asking about is the genres column in the data set we were looking at. So the normalized column would be the driver automatically detecting that there's multiple entries in the genres column and would split it in a separate virtual table. Some of our drivers, actually most of our drivers, support this functionality. It's an additional functionality that simplifies analyst workflow. But HiveQL currently does not do the renormalization. But in this case, it was very easy to do using Power BI functionality to do the same thing manually.
Thank you. This question is from May. Can the reports created in Power BI Pro be shared with those having standard Power BI?
Yeah, so in the PowerBI.com website, there is a clear licensing page which talks about the difference between the Pro and the standard queue. Basically, if you created a report which is importing data and below the data size limits defined for the standard user, you can definitely share it with the standard user. So it doesn't mean every report that the Power BI Pro authors requires a Pro user to consume it. That is not the case. Only when the report that is created is using Pro features, such as connecting to an on-prem data source, in those cases, the consuming user would also need to have Pro license.
Thank you, Dave. Can I connect to Hive with Microsoft Excel?
It's Alex here. Yes, absolutely. Any Odbc compliant application like Power BI or Excel could be used with a Hive driver or any other Odbc driver to connect to this data source.
Thank you. Does Simba offer connectors to other data sources?
Yes, absolutely. If you go to their website, www.simba.com, you can browse through a number of non-relational and relational data sources that we support. We support Couchbase, MongoDB, Amazon Redshift, DynamoDB, Cassandra, Google BigQuery, Apache HBase, a number of, it's a large list, but you're welcome to browse the ever-growing list of our drivers that we support, or data sources that we support.
Thank you. What was that web address again? Check that.
Address, I can probably share my screen. It's Simba, SIMBA.com, and we'll include it in the notes for this webinar, so it's easier for people to find them.
Great, thank you. And can the Hive data source be used by direct query mode, and used in direct query mode?
I'm assuming it's the same question as I answered previously about HiveQL. So,
is that it?
Yeah, so yes, you can. You need to enable the HiveQL, the pass-through in the driver configuration, and then it will support direct query mode as well.
And let's see. Where can I find the Odbc Odbc Hive driver for Power BI.
Sorry, what was the question again?
Where can I find the Odbc Hive driver for Power BI?
Yeah, this driver is, is actually, you can find it on Microsoft website. So if you just go to Microsoft.com and search for Hive Odbc driver, that's this page I demonstrated in the beginning of my demo. It's available both on Microsoft as a Microsoft download. And I've seen a question about 32 and 64-bit version. The driver is available in both architectures, so you just need to match the driver to the architecture of your Power BI. So if you're running a 64-bit version of Power BI executable, you need to run the 64-bit version of the driver, and vice versa. If you're running 32-bit Power BI executable, you need to select the 32-bit, but they're both available from the same location.
Thank you. And is there a way to limit the amount of data retrieved from Hive during design in order to save download time and costs?
So I responded, there is a feature in the queries window where you can limit the top number of rows that you could retrieve. So generally at the report authoring time, I recommend people to use that feature to limit the number of rows that you bring in. And at the time of publishing, you can remove that row limit. Alex, is there anything specific to Hive that you want to add?
There's no limits to the amount of data enforced by the driver. So it's really limited by the size of your memory. And like you said, you can limit the number of rows you import into Power BI, but there's no limit in the driver. It will just stream this data to you as long as you have the memory to save this data.
Okay, thank you. And we have one final question. Would everything work if Hive was on Hadoop and Azure?
Yeah, I can take this question. Yes, in the driver configuration that we were doing in the beginning of our session, in the authentication mechanism, we actually directly support several Azure connection types. So it's just a matter of configuring your connection, but we do use our driver with Azure as well.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, Alex. Thank you, May, for a wonderful presentation. Just a reminder to everybody that today's session was recorded, and a link to the recording along with the presentation files will be emailed to you within 48 hours. So thank you, everyone, for joining today. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.